All right, CRPN Central, this is Dr. Fox. Please like, comment, subscribe. It helps the mission more than you know so that I can do more for you. Welcome to TrialSide Chats. Whew, been 2 weeks. Feel like I'm kind of coming out of retirement a little bit here, everyone. Being a director at a site, it's been a while. And there's a lot of things that I forgot, like how to organize everything, but it's just like a bicycle. So I'm telling you, if you're a director right now and you're doing all of these things in director world, don't get discouraged at all. It comes back to you. It's leadership, it's organization, and if you ever need help, never be afraid to ask for friends. All right, so check this out, everyone. This is a CRPN vinyl sticker. If you bought the book or if you're CRPN site partner, odds are you have one of these. But this year, we're also going to be doing these. It's another vinyl sticker. It's the CRPN triangle logo. And I'm not going to tell you this because if you've been watching TrialSide chats, you may know this, but what do you think these triangles are a symbol of? I'll let you figure that out. And then if you do figure that out, what do you think are the color assignments? So see if it's in the comments, let me know. So welcome to TrialSide chats. This is the place where we come together. We talk about things and we try to lift each other up. We try to go over those weird case studies that everyone has questions over, maybe some misunderstandings in the industry on an administrative level. Whatever it is, we're here to serve you, and CRPN is here to serve you. Now, full disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer. I never said I was a lawyer, but if you don't, so please take this for the experience that it is. And if you are looking for an attorney, if you really need a lawyer, if you have questions, or you want to double back on things or double check on things, Edens, Science, Law, please talk to Edie. Edie knows her stuff. She is in my opinion, one of my favorite attorneys in the industry. She knows her stuff. She protects her sites, and she's really, really an awesome person. In fact, I just got off the phone with Edie right before this live event, and I have some things to share with you when it comes to the content. So keep Edie in mind for this episode especially. If you do not agree to this disclaimer, please turn the video off right now. I'd much rather you feel safer than have any kind of a misunderstanding going forward. Thank you very much. All right, ground rules for TrialSide chats. We're going to talk about clinical research, specifically clinical research finance and administration. We're going to talk about some very, very sensitive things. These are confidential in many different ways, and we want to make sure that we're helping each other. We're not pointing fingers. I don't want to name names. I want to look at the case studies so that we can look at the best practices so we can help everyone succeed. As a result, only concepts, no organizations, no finger pointing, no names. Keep it confidential. If you ever want to join TrialSide chats, come on in. As long as we follow these rules and we talk about case studies, then I think that we'll have a very good experience for everyone involved. All right, here's the icebreaker. So I'm telling you, everyone, with the world events going around right now, negotiations are getting really rough. I know for a fact sponsors are getting lower budgets. They're feeling squeezed. Therefore, they squeeze the CROs. Therefore, the CROs are squeezing the sites. Therefore, what happens is while costs are just skyrocketing with inflation, unfortunately, sites are getting strong-armed into trials that are setting up our patients and our sponsors for failures because that's what they were told to do. Have you ever run into this strategy, my dear site administrators? When you're negotiating, you go through standard practice, You get a first offer, you go through standard letter of justification that you expect to have, that back and forth, like you're buying a house, real estate, high, low, high, low. So you set everything up for a standard negotiation. You send it over there, and now an hour later, the negotiator sends something back to you, and it is almost exactly what they sent you in the first place. And I mean, in other words, it's nope, this is it, take it or leave it. We are going to completely not do a negotiation. You either do what we tell you to or we don't. I call that the stonewaller. So these people are strong arming sites into a clinical research budget that, and maybe they don't have control over it. Maybe they were told by the sponsor, the CRO management, and nope, you're going to have to push back. This is a take it or leave it. We're not going to do the standard games of negotiations. So here it is. And unfortunately, it's just not going to do it. So anyone out there ever dealt with a stonewaller? You can do so. Most of the time when a stonewaller comes in, they're going to say, oh, well, the sponsor has defined fair market value. Therefore, what we gave you the first time is what the sponsor is going to approve. Take it or leave it. They do the same thing with invoiceables sometimes, only worse. So it's going to be hack and slash and hack and slash. And oh, no, what we gave you the first time, that's what we have to offer. That's all there is to it. How do you counter a stonewaller? How do you come back and say, no, sorry, this isn't going to work. This isn't appropriate. What do you do in that case? So I'm not going to answer that right now. I'm going to wait, see if someone comes through comments and watches. But if I don't see you on the live event and you're watching this later, please send a comment. Let people know how you as a site handle the stonewaller negotiation strategy. Multiple ways to do it, but you have to be real careful with this one, because if you push too hard, or if you say the wrong thing, or if you take it in a different direction, it's going to result in the sponsor walking away from a trial that you could have done properly if it was negotiated and budgeted properly. So let me know what you guys think. All right, so we're going to cover parts of the book today. Some of it's not even in the book, but I did realize that there's some things that we're going to have to talk about before we have an understanding of this. So if you're new to research, if you're new to standard legal nomenclature, where I was trying to go through this and not take something for granted. So this might be an easy one for those of you who have been in the industry for a while, but if it's not, or if you need a refresher, or if you think that I missed something, chime in, let me know. I just want to make sure that everyone is on the same page as we go through this story. If you're looking for the book, that QR code sends you to Amazon. You're welcome. You can purchase this on Amazon and follow through, or you can contact CRPN directly. We can do 10% off shipping, 10% off the cost and offer free shipping. Okay. All right. So I realized that before we could really talk about this next topic, we have to get a couple ground rules in. And I realized that the book doesn't even cover this. So I kind of made this up just for this presentation. It's not in the book. You're going to see the terms on here in the book, but this process map is just for you, TrialSide Chats friends. I made this just for you. So when it comes to legal terms, the process of completing legal documents in the industry, you always start with some kind of a draft. The draft is just that. It's a document that both parties or all parties have a chance to look at, to change, to go back and forth, to adjust, whether it's in a budget form like an Excel spreadsheet, or it's in a legal document such as a Word document. Whatever it is, you start in draft form. And the sponsors will give you an offer, a draft offer, and then you as a site will go through and you'll redline it. And the term redline, it just means that you are adjusting the text in the document, in the legal document, to meet the expectations that you have on a legal level for the site. So track changes, that's one term, but when it comes to the back and forth, it's just a term redline. Redline means you're going through, you're making changes to the document and you're track changing it. And this is how you expect the document to read for you to approve it. It goes to an offer, back down to the site makes a counter, sends it back to the sponsor as an offer, first counter, second counter, first offer, second offer, back and forth, red line to red line, until finally both parties can look at that and say, you know what? It's red line to my expectations. I've compromised certain things. It looks good. I'm going to approve it. So if you have the book, and I want to be really careful when I say this, but if you have the book, you're going to see little boxes in the book that have italic text with red. Sometimes the red is crossed out, whatever it is. It's kind of showing you how to redline certain legal documents in a way that meet the site's needs. I'm not going to show these boxes on TrialSide chats, friends. There's a lot of reasons for that. Like I said before in the disclaimer, I am not a lawyer. I never claimed I was. And as a result, I don't want to put those red lines in the TrialSide chats. So if you have the book and you see those and you're saying, well, why aren't you covering this in TrialSide chats? Now you know why. So I'm not going to do that. But I do want you to know what a red line is, so that if you ever have an opportunity to talk to an attorney, such as Edie Edens, you're going to say, okay, well, I read the red line. I read how you redlined it. Use it as a verb if you want. And whatever that is, you're going to be like, okay, now I can at least have that conversation with Edie where I understand what is happening and how it's doing. Offer, counter, red line, go back and forth, compromise. Sometimes you write notes in the Word document to justify why you're redlining it. Sometimes CROs require that, until finally everyone comes together and they say, okay, I think I can live with this. I think I can perform this trial in a legal environment with how this is written from red line and back. The track changes are done. We approve it. We are all mutual here. We have a document that we are going to approve. So you go from draft, then it goes to approved, and they're going to finalize it. They're going to, quote, clean the document. You're going to have a clean document, which means a clean document is the document that has integrated the final red lines into an approved format, so that all you see on a clean document is what was agreed upon. This is a clean draft, which means it is ready to be routed for signatures after it's gone through QA process, after it has been reviewed and approved by everyone to make sure, okay, this is what we are signing. This is what we have agreed to. You go from a clean draft over, you're starting to get into execution. The first is partially executed. So partially executed is essentially the document itself in a way that has signatures on it, but it doesn't have all the signatures on it yet. Maybe it has 2 out of 3. Maybe it only has 1. Whatever it is, it's missing a signature from a stakeholder. So you have partially executed. And then finally, once everyone has signed it and you are good, you are locked in, you get the FE document. That's the fully executed agreement. This is the one that everyone pays attention to. They archive, they put it in their folders, they reference it when it comes to disputes. That fully executed agreement is the product of the legal workflow. Doesn't matter if it's a CDA, a CTA, a contract, whatever it is, you have a fully executed document that's what will be read, that's what will be adhered to. That's the mutual agreement. Okay, so now that we have that in place, now that we know the process of the legal documents, let's go forward into the next step. So today we're going back to pre-study world, but we're going to have a special focus on that legal workflow in pre-study. So generally what happens on the legal workflow is you're going to have a sponsor CRO either reach out to a site, or you're going to have a site reach out to a sponsor CRO. Whatever it is, there's a connection and there is an interest to do business together. And theoretically, what should happen is it's, hey, we're a site, we can do trials for you. And then the sponsor says, oh, we have a trial, we need a site. Let's talk about this. So very first thing ever should be a CDA or an NDA, a confidentiality disclosure agreement, or a non-disclosure agreement that is signed by all of the interested parties so that they can share information together when without having to worry about any leaking of confidentiality information. So theoretically, what happens is you have a CDA NDA. Very first thing ever, before you talk about anything, you should ideally have a CDA NDA in place. And then you start sharing information, whether it's a protocol synopsis or it is a feasibility or whatever it is. Now you start to share information once you have a confidentiality agreement in place. And then it goes through the whole process of the PSSV, assessments, going through all the way to award, and then you go into contract budget, you negotiate. I say theoretically because guess what's happened this week alone? So many sites are reporting to me that sponsors and CROs are reaching out to them and saying, hey, are you interested in this trial? And the site says, well, yes, I'm interested in this trial. And then all of a sudden they say, okay, well, go ahead and fill out this feasibility questionnaire. And so they're skipping the CDA NDA. They're skipping it. So sites, be really, really careful with that. I get it. You are in business development. You're, oh, get these trials, get them in the door. We want opportunities. It's like filling a job application. But I'm trying to let you know that you are leaking your confidential information to sponsors and CROs who are just collecting it and selling it or analyzing it for free. You're volunteering your value to sponsors and CROs without protection of confidentiality. I just saw a PSSB get performed. Yeah, a CRA came onto site. Let me see your SOP manuals. Let me ask you all these questions. Let me pretty much dissect your entire site and look at it without a confidentiality agreement. Sites, what do you think they're going to do with that information? I can guarantee you, you're not going to get money for all that hard work that you've developed, and they're going to get something out of it. So be real careful. When in doubt, you really, really should consider something on a confidentiality level to protect your site's value. It's not just about the sponsor and their drug and their IP and their patents. This is also about you, sites. And sponsors, please consider that. Sites are very, very competitive in the trials that they do, and they have proprietary information that they do to help them succeed. This is not a community fair where every site's going to help themselves. You, as a consumer, are also responsible for maintaining confidentiality when it comes to this information. So let's think about that a lot. And I do mean a lot. All right. If you have the book, you will see on page 45 this huge long section about CDAs and NDAs, best practices, what you want to look for in them, things that you might consider on a checklist. You're not going to see that on TrialSide chats because this is very, very sensitive information. I don't want it to be taken out of context. However, what I can say is that if you have any questions about CDAs or NDAs, or if you want to create a communication plan or a quality standard for your CDAs and NDAs, call Edie Edens. Someone out there, if you're watching, please type it in the message so I know that this comes through. Call Edie Edens. I had the opportunity to talk to Edie before this live event just to make sure that she was okay with me putting her name out there. And she said, of course, absolutely. She's here to serve her sites. She gave me some really cool opinions about CDAs and NDAs, oftentimes how they were overly used sometimes. But we both had come to an agreement that they are really, really important to manage for sites. So you got to be careful with them. Edie knows her stuff about this. We were talking shop. We were talking about that, sometimes PSSVs that go without NDAs. But if you ever want to talk to Edie about one-way versus two-way, whether that's good for your site, returning information at the sponsor's expense, termination, the duration of a CDA, how many years are you maintaining that confidentiality? All of these different things, Edie knows them very well, and she is experienced with many, many, many different people who have the different needs of a confidentiality agreement. I highly recommend You're welcome to look on page 45 for what I've seen many sites do as best practices. However, give ED a call when it comes to these legal documents. In all sincerity, it's just worth it. It's worth it, everyone. So, and if you're out there, for one, I hope you're having a great time. We miss you. This could have been a much cooler conversation with you here. And if you're ever up for it, maybe we can have a follow-up. Always happy to have you on here to talk about it. So anyway, in my opinion, I would talk to Edie about mutual two-way CDAs, governance. Make sure that you have a good idea about governance with her. Definitely sponsors expense. And a lot of the terminologies when it comes to indemnification, the definition of confidentiality, what is and is not covered, how long it is covered, so many different things to have these conversations about, and they're all going to be customized to your site's situation. So give Edie a call. All right, let's talk about case studies. Really interesting one this week. I'm sorry. Past 2 weeks. So your questions are really getting interesting. I really appreciate it, sites. If I haven't addressed them yet, please be patient with me. We're having TrialSide chats every 2 weeks right now until further notice. But this was a really interesting one. So does the sponsor have to pay trial participant stipends? And I know this has come from a number of things. Number one is there's this weird expectation in the industry now where whenever you negotiate a budget, it's pretty much just, well, how much, what's the stipend in the budget? What's the stipend in the budget? Sites, the answer is no. If it's not in the contract, sponsors they don't have to pay participant stipends. It's not the law that they have to sit there and pay trial participants for their time. They don't have to reimburse. It all depends on how it is in the contract that's negotiated. But keep in mind that negotiated contract is often secondary to the ICF. So this is one of those really interesting situations where the financial responsibility starts in regulatory world with that ICF, that agreement with the patient and what that patient signs. That informed consent form is going to tell you what kind of stipend the patient should be expecting for all of the different things that they do throughout the trial. Since it is backwards, there are situations where sites will input a stipend into the informed consent form that's approved by the IRB that's not in the legal contract, which means that the sites are responsible to the patient through regulatory documents to pay a stipend that the sponsor is not legally required to fund. Think about that. It doesn't happen all the time. Many times sponsors have to approve an IRB submission and the sponsors will control the stipends or whatever it might be. They have to be okay with it. But that's the difference between regulatory submissions, where the IRB approves something the site asks permission to do, and legal agreements where the sponsor promises to pay the site for things. Answers not all the time. And the next question is, who controls stipend values? Well, those can be negotiated in a contract, but there are times where, like, let's say a patient drove and the sponsor said, yeah, we're not paying for that. The site, it's very possible the site could pay for that. So it's a really tricky one. And I would love if anyone who has passions about compensation of patients versus compliance versus ethics versus regulatory, I would love to have this conversation with someone on what is allowed and compliant and okay, and what is actually happening right now. I think that there may be a little bit of a misunderstanding in many different ways. All right. We randomized a patient, but the sponsor is making a screen fail them. As a result, the sponsor refused to pay for the screen failure. Oof. It's a tricky one. So this is pretty deep. And what do you guys think out there? For one, if you randomize a patient, in other words, if a patient went through inclusion exclusion criteria, was found to be approved and eligible for a trial, why would the sponsor make you screen fail them? Um, let's hope that you didn't have a deviation and you didn't randomize a patient that shouldn't have been in. The question is, why would the sponsor have made you screen fail them? If it is like a lab result, or if it's something, an oversight, or anything like that, where the patient was not eligible, but your site determined that they were, we're fighting deviations there, and that's a whole other ball game. I'm not even going to touch the deviations there. But there are some times when the sponsor is making the site screen fail for other reasons. This happens very, very commonly when the sponsor has chosen not to enroll any more patients. Sometimes a patient, they got through a randomization and then the sponsor didn't get their email out to say stop enrollment. So they'll make sites screen fail them or take them off of the trial. But I think one of the most common purposes for this is actually when a patient is randomized and then they go home, they think about it, and they sit there and say, you know what? I'm getting cold feet. I really just don't want to do this. I'm going to withdraw consent. And what happens from the sponsor's point of view, they look at it as, well, patient withdrew consent, therefore they need to be a screen failure. Bam, done. But then the site's sitting there saying, no, 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 no. We did everything we were supposed to do. We enrolled this patient. They have a randomization number. And after they randomized, then they withheld or they withdrew consent. That's not a screen failure at all because the patient was qualified. They were randomized. In that case, sites, you better know your stuff. So if you know that you did everything properly and accordingly, make sure that there's a terminology behind this so that if the patient withdrew consent after randomization, they are not a screen fail because you don't want that to go against your ratio, your cap. You don't want that to do anything with your screen fail provisions. And just make sure that the sponsor pays you for the work that you did. That's all there is to it. I don't. I don't know. That's a confusing one. You'd have to ask more follow-up questions to understand the direction you want to go there. But my gut tells me if the site did their job, this is a withdraw consent opportunity, which means that it's just a matter of clarification for the sponsor. I should also note that sometimes the withdrawal consent is defined in the contract. So go read the contract, and maybe there's an opportunity where that's defined, and you can have a little more clarity into how you can manage that situation. Okay, so how much justification and information should I have to give the sponsor to make a decision about awarding us the trial? Yeah, this is where, and this goes back to where what I'm seeing a lot is that sites are being approached by sponsors and CROs to fill out all this feasibility stuff, not because it's a trial, but that they're really trying to grab that site data. And they're getting pretty invasive as far as it goes. Sometimes they're asking for things, especially without a CDA, NDA, and they're saying things like, oh, patient populations and this and that, all the way down, tell us your enrollment plan. How would you enroll these patients? Or even down to tell us exactly what stakeholder you plan on assigning to this when you do all of these things. No. Okay. I need to really, really highlight that many, many times the CRO representatives who are making these choices don't fully understand the legal arrangements between sites and sponsors. Specifically, of course, I'm pulling the independent contractor card here, but independent contractors, sites, you are independent contractors, which means that you can look at the IRS, you can look at the definition, you can look at the definition of fair market value, whatever it is, you think of it like a contractor. According to the laws of independent contractor, consumer will approach you and ask you to do something, provide a service that you are specialized in doing. As an independent contractor, you are just that. you're independent, which means that you have the sole discretion on the performance of that task, the performance and completion of those services, including discretion for assignment of resources, whatever it is, you are the one responsible for getting it done, sites. And many, many times I think that people way early on, they're trying to collect all this information from sites and they're trying to treat them almost like an employee, but on a legal level, they're independent contractors. We see this a lot in feasibilities. The people who are performing feasibilities, they sit there and they're asking all these questions. Sometimes they're trying to get you to lock into a certain amount of patients to enroll. They're trying to get you to lock into a certain process here and there, whatever it is. Friends, a feasibility is not a legally binding document. You can ask whatever question you want on the feasibility. It's just an informational survey. And I've seen so many times these CRAs, they'll come back and they say, well, on this feasibility, you filled this out and this is what you said. And the sites are like, okay, well, show me the legal document that says that I have to adhere to that. Just like you don't have a document in the feasibility that says I'm guaranteed a trial, I can't guarantee that these are the processes that are going to happen. Not in a feasibility. That's not a legally binding contract. CRAs get super mad about that, and I try to do it respectfully, but I think that we're putting way too much legal weight onto a questionnaire, whatever it is. So to answer your question, of course, you want to provide respectful information to a sponsor to make a good business decision on performing services with you, on collaborating with you. There's no reason to be rude, but there's a certain amount of protection that you have to apply to your site so that, for example, let's say they come in and they say, show me your entire SOP manual. I want to see all of your SOPs to see exactly how you do this. Well, a huge practice among CRA sites is they'll collect all these SOPs from all the sites, and then they'll just distribute the SOPs to all of their sites because they want optimal enrollment, and they just breach confidentiality because the SOP itself could be proprietary on trade practices that allow you to do your job. So give sponsors just enough information so that they know that you're a quality site, they know what you're doing, and that you can have a good reputation to perform their trial appropriately. Do not give them your entire playbook. That is not what has to happen during site selection. Same thing with justification and budgets, negotiations, things like that. Give them enough information to let them make a good business decision, but you don't have to write everything out. You do and should keep some things to yourself because that is what makes you a competitive site. All right. And that was it. Super duper fast. TrialSide chats. That's the objective. I'm not here to keep you guys here all day. Make it nice, comprehensive, and informational. Please connect with CRPN. Again, CRPN is free for sites to join. No strings attached. You don't have to buy anything. Join CRPN, join the community, be a part of the positive change. Have a network, a buddy system where if you have questions, we can link you together. We can try to figure out how to solve these things. If I don't have an answer, odds are I know someone who does. If you're a sponsor or a CRO or even a vendor, CRPN is intentionally affordable for you to succeed. The entire purpose of CRPN is to make sure that we cut out a lot of costs for research so that we can perform it accurately, rapidly, and we can translate science so we can help as many patients as possible. I really want to stress that is the mission of CRPN. We're here to save lives, and we're here to save lives so we can all come together at a high quality standard so we can do this. We've got this, everyone. There's the website. Please feel free to ask information about CRPN's processes. There's LinkedIn. I'm all over the place. Actually, I'm kind of backing off of LinkedIn. I don't know. It's kind of getting boring. It seems very repetitive right now. If you've been there long enough, you're seeing there's new generations of people thinking they have novel ideas when you're like, yeah, that was a few years ago before you were here. And so it's kind of like you're seeing recycled opinions from different people. And then there's YouTube. So YouTube is meant to be the entire trough of knowledge for CRPN. Over 400 videos, content everywhere talking about how to support our clinical research sites for administration. And I got a big surprise, everyone. If you're still watching, I see one person, three people. There's a couple people viewing right now. I just got a really, really cool approval from a really legitimate source, and you're going to see a historic publication coming through very, very soon. If you're watching, hopefully you already know what I'm talking about, but we signed the documentation today, and we'll be able to make a really, really cool announcement, be able to discuss that further with some of our collaborators, and I can't wait. So remind me if you're out there, remind me to let you know how that's going, maybe in a couple weeks. I'm still on site every other week at this site. We are working to serve the site, to grow it in its community, make sure that it's okay. For my site out there, I'm really, really proud of you guys. You have done an amazing job, and it's an honor to serve you. I'm in all sincerity. All right, so this is Dr. Fox. Please like, comment, subscribe, share your voice, everyone. I'll see you next time.